Hey everybody, Miles Bubbett here, and we are supposed to record one of our open house meetings tonight, and I'm just going to go ahead and record it now and send it out to everyone at one time. So if you can't make it, here it is. If you can, I really would love for everyone to come if you can, because there's going to be tons of questions that come up, and every orientation meeting goes a little bit differently. But here's one for those who cannot make it tonight. If you can't, please send me your questions, your comments, your concerns, your anything you have my way. I want to hear it. At the top here, you can kind of see some of the rundown that we're going to take this evening. Some of this stuff is stuff that we've already talked about, but sometimes it helps to hear it twice, or if you have a question about it, you can always stop me and ask me. So let's jump in. Here's a picture of what our classroom looks like the day that we left. Oh man, it doesn't look like that right now, but I can't wait to get back into it. I'm missing those bright colored walls and all that light. So who am I? Got a little collage of pictures here that describe a little bit about me. My name is Miles. I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, and went to school down in the Gulf Coast when I was in college. Went to a small state school down there. And then if you look in the top left corner, I chased that girl up from the Gulf Coast all the way to Cleveland, Ohio. And you could say it worked out. We've been married now for a handful of years. What, how many years? 3 years?
Almost 5. I'll be back next year.
I'm just teasing her. We've been married almost 5 years. So we moved up in 2014. And so been working at campus ever since. I got a job at campus teaching 4th grade my first year. When I was in Alabama, I taught high school and middle school history. When I moved to Cleveland, I made the switch to elementary school. Started a soccer program at Campus International a couple of years ago. I grew up playing soccer, and I was coaching all over the Gulf Coast. I was working my way up some national level certifications before I left there. And I would love to get back into those certifications pretty soon, because I love the sport and I love to grow in it. We got 2 dogs, Reggie and Rue. You can see them over here. And my wife and I, we love to go backpacking and camping so much that I drag my friends and my family to go with me, because there's Mr. Heron. He's one of the middle school teachers. And here's my wife and I this past summer. You can't really tell, but she's been covered in mud for 3 days at that point in the place called the Dolly Sides Wilderness in West Virginia. So we love being outside, love getting active, love playing sports. And here's a couple of pictures of the students we've had in the past, doing some field trips and stuff. And here's my family right here. I have one little sister. Her name's Mallory. She is 4 years younger than me. She is teaching well, she's not teaching. She's working at a nonprofit education development center in Birmingham, Alabama. Her boyfriend is the one that I often work with, because he's teaching 5th grade. So we talk on the weekends a lot about things that are working, things that aren't. I've gotten some ideas from him, and I'm sharing a lot with him as well. And my mom and my dad right there are both educators. So my dad taught a high school band program at the same school for longer than I've been alive. And my mom was a middle school choir teacher. So we're both very educational based and very music based. So I'm really excited, because 4th grade's the year that kids get instruments. And I remember that as a kid. It was always a lot of fun. So that's a little bit about me. I'd love to share more, but let's get into some other stuff. So this is gonna be like, what do 4th graders learn? This slide has all of the CMSD content. So this is like if you were in a regular school, you'd have your math science time, your social studies time, your ELA time, and science time. And these are the curriculum books that we would use. This Math Eureka stuff is obviously for the math, the science fusion. If you picked up some of these books from your school pickup, then like these are some of the books we would use. But we are an IB school, International Baccalaureate School, and that means that we try to make everything transdisciplinary, which means that ideally, it can't always work this way, it's not perfect, but ideally we teach concepts and themes, and we try to mix the content together. So like it might be your child's trying to write a paragraph about a scientific process, and we're paying attention to both the scientific process and grammatical correctness and punctuation, and it's a lesson on both. So it's kind of hard to tell, like, is this a ELA, is this a language lesson, a writing lesson, or a science lesson? So that is the goal. And we try to make the content transdisciplinary and teach those themes. And I'll talk more about those themes in a second. As we've been adjusting to this world of COVID-19 and virtual learning, we are going to be better about getting those themes in now that we have the content organized and we have our platforms organized. I have kind of been pinholing things a little bit more just to see if we can get students in the routine of checking different places online. And now that that's starting to work, we're going to dive into some of these themes. And on top of that CMSD content, we have these online navigation things that we got to figure out. These are pictures of the chalkboard I have over here in the corner on my wall. And I made a video that shows the daily flow of how students are going to navigate these online worlds. And there's like all these little dots over here. I was trying to explain how they've organized all our online content like a middle school or a high school class, where you start with this subject, you go to the next, you go to the next, and so on and so on. But the problem is for a fourth grader who's not used to that and everything's online so they could click back and forth, it kind of feels like this train wreck of like ping-ponging all around trying to go to different subjects, with this middle subject right here being our home room, like Mr. Bubbitt's home page. So it's like they're clicking here and go to science, clicking here, go to art, clicking here, go to math, clicking here, go to small groups. It's just a lot. So I've tried to design it where the kids come into their homeroom, they start with me, they come into the homeroom, they can navigate through all their subjects and end in the homeroom. It's not perfect, but we're working on it. But this is kind of like navigating these things. And hopefully with the way I've designed it, it'll make it easier for them to go to Schoology and use apps that they could find in Clever, like Seesaw and Newsela and BrainPop. All those apps, there's like 30, I'm not joking, we probably have like 25 live on my page right now. We're not using all of them yet, but we'll get there. But I'm trying to embed them all in Schoology to make it easy for students to find things where they don't have to jump around and move. Like ping pong is like the best example I could think of, because you're just do everywhere. And I'm trying to make it easy. Because if I was not the best student in fourth grade, I mentioned that in one of the videos. I tell you stories about me getting in trouble. I was often more interested in shooting hornets at my friends across the classroom than I was in learning about grammar. And my wife still makes fun of me about spelling to this day. So I'm trying to make it as easy, because I think about the students who I know need a little help, because I was one of those kids growing up. All right. There's a video on this on our YouTube channel, and it's also going to be attached in this email I'm sending to you. But this is going back to those IB transdisciplinary things. We have 6 units. The first unit is who we are, and we have a central idea. We have key concepts and related concepts, and those concepts are what we try to pick our content, like what math or science or social studies or English we're going to teach at the same time, based on the concepts and the related concepts. So things like subjects like math, you kind of have to go in order. You can't really skip around too much, because if you skip around too much, you're going to really confuse the students. Somewhat true for ELA as well, but you can kind of pick what writing unit you do first, second, or third. Like, is it going to be informational or persuasive or whatever? So for these key concepts, we pick as best as we can. Like sometimes math is just going to be math, and sometimes science is just going to be science or whatever. But we try to pick content based on those concepts, and that way we can mix them together in a way that actually makes sense. Because it's really powerful to talk about persuasive writing and advocating for your student rights in social studies, right? Those go hand in hand. So you can really dive deep into both at the same time and create some really meaningful, powerful experiences. My first one is who we are. This is the typical schedule for the year, but this might change. We adjust our units based on what's happening in the world, what we feel is more relevant and valuable for our students. And also just based on time, you know, COVID's going to be a weird schedule. So we might adjust this even more. But all of these are we're hoping to generate action. And that's where we get this be the change theme. Julie just was kind of inspired at the beginning of the year after having such a heavy start to 2020 and even into the start of the school year. Just instead of expecting change for us, talking about what does it mean to actually be the change that we want to see and working with our students to do that. And that's what these units are hoping. We're hoping they generate actions from the student level and at an appropriate level, right? Like a fourth grader trying to organize this club to pick up trash during PE or something, right? Like that's huge action for a fourth grader to give up PE to make their hallway a better place, right? Little things like that are huge, and we want to celebrate them to build up confidence and encourage that more. So if you see actions coming, we would love to hear them. How are they taking tiny actions to bring joy to the community around them? How are they expressing that they want to exercise their rights and being responsible for others? You know, there's a million things this looks like, but any small action where they're taking to be the change and make the world a better place, we would love to hear about. Down at the bottom, we just have some of our key concepts. These are the things we try to hook things into when we look at the world. Like we'll be looking at pictures and talk about what's the function of this image or how might this image cause change, things like that. But these are that's kind of the buzzwords we use to get kids thinking about IB. And what these key concepts do is they get everyone, not just kids, even adults, to get everyone to quit thinking just about the topic and think about the larger picture that that topic exists in. So if we're talking about a current event with the presidential debate was last night, I don't know how much of it you watched, but we can talk, instead of talking about just the topic of the presidential debate, we can talk about what is the form of it, what is the form of a debate, and how should it go versus how should it not go, and what are debates, what is the function of a debate? One of the students asked before, they were like, why are they doing this? What's a good point? What is the point? What is the function? What's the reason to have one, right? So you can talk about form and function, and you can get into a deep lesson about how to have discourse on tricky topics and how to agree to disagree and be productive. And you can talk about the function and trying to speak to a broader audience and influence change or persuade people to pick your side. Interesting, kind of removes them from the small topic, and it forces them to understand the small topic to begin with. You can't understand the larger world until you understand the tiny piece, but if you get students to look at the larger world first and then go back and forth, they can start to make meaning of small things and big things at the same time. It's a little bit messy, but it's really cool. It's one of my favorite ways to teach. All right, let's know that. Let's keep on going. This is an example of what the first unit is going to look like. I could send this to you if you like. This is just a screenshot, but of a few boxes. But you can see the first transdisciplinary theme is who we are, and it's an inquiry into the nature of the self. Who am I? Where is my place in this world? Responsibilities promote and protect rights is our central idea. So we're really diving into the rights of the individual and your responsibilities towards the rights of other individuals, and being true to yourself and advocating for yourself, because it's an inquiry into who you are and your place in this world. So really interesting stuff. And what this really does is it takes these topics that can exist in a textbook and exist in a tin can, like they're just boring topics in history, boring topics in science or whatever, and they make them immediately relevant to the kids, because I'm not going to give them a prescribed curriculum. It's more of like, what does this mean to you? And then we talk about the topics, we get past the topics, the content, and we start talking about why this is important, or why like how we can use these things to make our world better. And part of the way we do that, like this first unit especially, we focus on the rights of a child using the UNICEF, United Nations Conventions on the Right of the Child. This is an international organization, obviously, but we use this to kind of create our social emotional learning. So instead of talking about like being nice for the sake of being nice, listening for the sake of listening, taking your turns, all these social emotional skills that must be learned in fourth grade, all the curriculum, if you ask me, is just really prescribed and it's not written for everybody. It's meant for, I don't know, it just doesn't land. It's just kind of like, it's a textbook for emotional skills. It's kind of odd if you think about it. So what we use is we use these rights of the child to talk about your rights that you have to advocate for yourself and the responsibility you have to advocate for others, or the responsibility you have to at least protect or respect the rights of others. And through that, we talk about classroom discussion rules. And through that, we talk about how we're going to take turns and share materials. And it makes it like, hey, you have the right to be safe and feel healthy and respected. And if someone is doing something that doesn't make you feel that way, we talk about it through this lens of, hey, I have the right to feel like this and you have the right to do that. But we have to keep that balance of rights and responsibilities, right? The freedom to express yourself, but also the responsibility to not make others feel threatened, right? How do we do that in the classroom? And that's the language we use when it comes to social emotional skills. And we'll use things like zones of regulation, like, are you feeling blue or red or yellow, that kind of stuff. But we always mix it with this as well, because this is so much more relevant. It's so much more real world and big picture. And it takes some of those like kind of tin can type curriculums and could make them relevant to the real things that we're seeing in today's current events, right? We could talk about a child rights lesson and how to share blocks in the classroom when we're talking about fractions. And we could also take some of that same language and talk about the social movements, like with Black Lives Matter or the conservative political things that we're seeing in the world. We can use the same language to talk about them both, and that's powerful, all right? So moving away from that, the fun stuff is, I could talk forever about that. But this year we are going to try to take some things virtually, like the NWEA. I believe that almost every other test has been on hold, and they're going to ask us to try to take the NWEA virtually. Now, before we go any further, I just want to make this very, very clear. I don't want this to be a point of stress for anyone. I want it to be a point of stress for you. I don't want it to be a point of stress for your children. I don't like how testing is emphasized so much in America that it causes so much anxiety. So this is how I lead. We are going to do our best with this, and then that is going to be what it is. As long as we are trying our best, that is all they can ask us. And I'm going to do my best to support. I'm going to ask your kids to do their best to try. And I'm going to ask you to do your best to help support your kids try. And then whatever happens, that is what it is. We have done our best. I do not want any stress over like meeting a certain score is not important right now. Making sure we showed this amount of growth or to hit this standard, not as important right now. The reason we're taking this test is just so the teachers can see, because this is the only test that we get immediate feedback on, and it's very descriptive and it's very helpful. This is like the only test I feel that about. But it gives us feedback right away. Within about a 36-hour window, we get it right back, and it will help us understand what has happened in this huge gap we have between the end of last year and the beginning of this year. The summer slide is a real thing. The COVID slide is something we do not understand because we do not know the damage of it yet. And this is going to help us assess. So we're going to take it in early to mid-October. I'm going to teach everyone how to check their device this week on Thursday and Friday. The hardest thing that we're going to have to figure out how to do is to allow the settings for the pop-up blocker to work on that one website, which is quite easy to do, but those little soft skills for fourth graders can be hard. And then, just getting everyone prepared that day, making sure they have headphones in, paper, a charger, like little things like that. Make sure they ate something that morning. So we're going to start that early October, like in a week or so. And I'll walk us through that process later. But again, I don't want stress over this at all. All right. Do your best. I'm going to do my best. And that's all they could ask of us. And then whatever happens is what we'll go with. All right. I'm sorry, my slides got a little out of order there, but this was supposed to be before the NWEA. But this is what a typical day looks like in the 4th grade. And this is posted on Schoology. We have 5 meetings a day. One of those meetings is a small group. The only exception to that is Wednesday, where we have just the morning meeting. And there's 3 schedules, unfortunately, for 1 week. Monday, Tuesday, and Friday have the same schedule with a whole group, encore, small groups, whole group, lunch, small groups, whole group, and independent work. And if your kids are not working with me in a small group, they're supposed to be doing independent work. So if they're not on a Zoom meeting with me, they're supposed to be doing independent work. All right. You can see we got Mandarin here 2 days a week. And then you can see the encores. Thursday schedule is a little different. We have a whole group lesson with Miss Orange where all 4th graders take part in a science activity here. So we've moved the small groups on Thursday to this part. It changes only for half the kids. And then instead of having a whole group activity at 11, we have it at 12:50. So that's Thursday's got one major switch in it. And then the 3rd schedule is just Wednesday, which is 1 meeting in the morning. And then Wednesday, I truly want to be a time to catch up. There's so many times in school that I reteach lessons or activities, or I pull small groups and we sit and we spend a lot of time working through things. And unfortunately with this, we don't have that amount of immediate communication. I could teach a lesson and I could feel it falling apart as I do it and then realize that didn't work and then immediately pull some small groups and start working on it. And let the other kids try to figure out things on their own. Or I could be teaching a lesson and be like, this is going really well, except for these 2 students. And I need to pull these 2 students because how I did it the first time just didn't land. So with that, I would immediately pull those 2 students. And it's hard for me to gauge that because so much of this learning now is like introducing something and then they go try it on their own. And I don't see them do it always in real time. So Wednesday is a day, and these after school times, right? These this independent work time from 2:30 to 3:20 every day. All right, those are times where we can schedule. You can call me, and we could schedule a Zoom call. We could just jump on the Zoom call. We might bounce around some ideas of having the students work together during those times in small groups so they can just help each other and also have some social time. But we'll come back to that social time here in a few minutes. But that's a daily flow. We're doing these 5-finger schedules every morning. So really important to get everyone in our meetings at all times, because right now we're starting to introduce content and themes and concepts. So if your child misses one lesson, it really could impact them. And I've recorded those and put those on Schoology. The students know where those are. So if you do miss, it's not a big deal. You can find it, but there's nothing like being in person and being able to interrupt. Just like, hey, I got a question. That's confusing. Help me out. So to help the kids navigate this, because I would not navigate this very well as a 4th grader unless I had some strong supports. All this information is on Schoology, and I've created about a 25-minute video that walks you through all of that process. But we do 5-finger schedules because we have 5 meetings a day: morning meeting, encore, midday, closing meeting, and 1 small group. So we write that down on our fingers on the left-hand side of the paper, and on the right, we write down things that the activities that are expected today. This is one from, I believe, on Monday. And we cross it off as we go through it. We write down the small group of our individual time here. But this is really going to help us. You can really help support me and support your child's learning by asking them to reflect on their day using this. So they will have this in the morning, And you could talk to them about it during lunch. You could talk to them about it at the end of the day and just say, hey, what's going well? What are you struggling with? How's this happening? Tell me about your day, and make them dig deep. Don't let them off with like, oh, we did some poetry. Like, what did they do in poetry? Like, push them to get into the details and ask them to explain it to you. Because if they can't, then you could jump on Schoology and be like, oh, you don't know? Well, let's go back and look at Schoology and see what that was about. Maybe I can help you. Or if you're finding that they quite often can't explain it, even though they're really trying to, then that's something that I need to know, because that means I'm confusing them, okay? And that's something that I do often. I try not to do it often, but it happens. And in the classroom, I can remedy that right away. If I realize I've made some directions that are confusing or unclear, I can clarify or make a change. Unfortunately, y'all are the ones that are going to see the consequences of my confusing actions if they are confusing. So if your child is like really trying to do something like on Zern Math or whatever, and it's just not making sense, then please tell me. That's a small group or a whole group change if I've totally messed up, right? It happens. I just need to know. So talk about these daily reflections with them. Talk with me. Tell me what is going well and what is not going well. Check Schoology. I'm going to send a separate email out with how to get your parent account online. There's a certain code that you need to get access to your child's account, so you're attached to your child and all their courses. We've been experimenting with that because some of us accidentally added all of our parents as students. We don't want to do that. We just want you to be able to see the materials. So I think we finally figured out how to not do this and do it the right way. And lastly, I at least try once a week-ish to make a video on YouTube to just either reflect or go into super detail about explaining something. I'm trying to keep those videos short, but some of them are pretty long, but they will really help you clarify. I hope they will really help clarify some of the stuff that we're doing. Like if you want to know a really good in detail look at how to use this 5-finger chart and how to go through Schoology on a day-to-day routine basis, I've made a video that explains all of that. So whenever you got a few moments, and if your child's really struggling, just sit down and watch some of those videos, because they will help you, and then you will be better. You will be able to better help your child when it comes to some of these weird COVID-related learning experiences. All right. This is some directions on how to set up the Schoology account, but I want to email this to you so you don't have to worry about reading this right now. I'll send you your code with these directions, and I'll send it to you individually, all right, until we're all connected, kind of like I did with the email addresses at the beginning of the year. My last thing I'm going to try to end with here, and this might be something that many of you guys know about me, or many of you don't. I think many of you, I don't know, I know that some of y'all have chosen to be in my classroom for this reason, but I just feel like I need to express this every year and kind of own this space. So I am, at the beginning of the presentation, you can see I'm really big on rights and responsibilities and deep themes that cut into our current events and in this world. And I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama. And my 4th grade experience was very different than many other students around our country in some reasons. In some ways, it wasn't different at all. But growing up in Birmingham, Alabama, 4th grade was that year where we started looking at the content for the local and state history and how it connects to national history. And it wasn't really long before we started looking at civil rights photos, like the one down here below. And this is on 6th Street in Birmingham, or really close to it. And my dad, in his jazz bands, played at a place that was like just down over Walter Gadsden here. He's this man here, or over his shoulder, just beyond that sign. So I started seeing these photos of me as a kid on these streets and having my experiences as a kid on these streets, and realizing that my experiences do not match the history here. that I have photos of. Like, my experiences of the street don't match this photo. And it was hard for me to start separating those two worlds because I was being confronted with something that I didn't know how to process, because a lot of people around me weren't doing that. They weren't challenging me to process it, at least at a certain point. And then in 5th grade, we started going on field trips, and we went to the Civil Rights Museum, and we went to the 16th Street Baptist Church. And I was challenged to process these kind of things when it talked about race and inequity and class in our culture and in America today. And I was confronted with these truths, and I started asking myself really interesting questions for 5th graders and a younger kid to ask, especially talking about my family and just knowing that, like, my grandparents were around during this time. Like, what side were they on? And having to really confront that. And I couldn't let it go. I also played soccer with a lot of Hispanic students that some of their families were migrant workers. So, like, I was building deep relationships with that community, and then also seeing that my experiences in school as a student who was not very good, who was not always cooperative, were always so much easier than my Hispanic friends and my Black friends' experiences. And so I was just confronted with this everywhere I looked. I saw it very early on, and I couldn't let it go. And my way of responding to these issues is by teaching. This is my form of resistance. And, for a 4th grade classroom, that means that we explore some pretty tricky topics, a lot of things that are new for us. So what I've done is I've really spent a lot of my career seeking out advice and mentors and curriculum that helps us explore the world honestly, but in appropriate ways that are developmental appropriate for 4th graders. Use things from the Equal Justice Initiative, from teaching tolerance, and I break those down, or I make them more appropriate for a 4th grade classroom. But we talk about these things, and I want you to know that that's going to happen. And if there's something that you feel makes you uncomfortable, something that I've said, or something that comes out kind of odd, like your child says, "Hey, we talked about this today, and this is what Mr. Bubbett said," I want to totally admit that I might get things wrong. I'm going to own the space that I'm a white male teaching a very diverse classroom. And that if I say something that is not correct, this is a conversation that we could have explicitly. We don't have to beat around the bush. I really hope that you feel comfortable coming directly to me if something makes you uncomfortable. Also, if something comes out wrong on, like, the child end of things, right? These are very complex issues. Like, we're going to talk about some really tricky topics in our classroom, like race, class, and current events and past events and things like that. And it might be hard for students to process some of that because they're still in 4th grade. So if something comes out kind of funny and they're like, "We talked about this today, and this is what," ask them, "Well, what makes you say that?" Or, "Tell me more about that." Or, "Can you explain what you're thinking?" And help them process it, right? Because quite often, sometimes we have these conversations and it just takes time for kids to understand. And to be honest with you, we're trying to still understand as adults. So I just want to know that this is something that is on the table. We're starting off reading a book called One Crazy Summer. It's about 3 little girls who grew up in the 1960s in Brooklyn, New York. They come from a broken family, and the characters wrestle with that. They come from, they see different levels of class, and they wrestle with that. They are Black, traveling to Oakland, California, and they talk about the traveling between New York and California. And they get involved with the Black Panther Party. So we talk about the Black Panther comic books and the TV shows and the movies and where that originally started. We also talk about the misrepresentation of the Black Panther Party and how come on news pictures we have of the Black Panthers, we always see these pictures of militant men and women carrying rifles. However, the Black Panthers were really known for their summer programs and educational institutes for children in places like Oakland. And why isn't that the first thing we talk about? So this is the stuff we're going to get into, and it might be tricky, but it is something we can talk about. And I want you to know that this is always on the table for you to approach with me. And I'm going to talk about it. And if there's something that you wish to be arranged or adjusted, I would love to have that conversation with you to make sure that everyone feels included and safe and open and welcome in our classroom. All right. So that is pretty much the end. Still to come, some things that are going to happen is based on the happy hour that we had last week. And if you missed it, we are going to schedule more happy hours. I love the idea of doing one a month. And that's just the time for me to sit back and listen to you, listen to your perspective about what's going well, what's not. So there'll be more of those coming. We'll do YouTube Kids, trying to experiment some ways around those blockers, although I think we figured it out with Schoology. We're going to try to figure out a social time for the students to do small groups and just have some time to socialize in our day, because I know that's super important. So that's all still in the books. Those are all things that you approach me on during our happy hour, and I'm still figuring out how to get them in our day. But that is all I got for you. I hope you were doing well. I hope you were safe. That is my cell phone number. I'm pretty sure everyone has it, but feel free to use it. Take care, be well. Please send me your comments, your questions, your connections. Send me all of it. And I can't wait to talk to you soon. Goodbye.